We weren't supposed to come back alive. And the worst part is we knew something was wrong before we even unpacked the bags. The police kept asking me the same question over and over again. Their voices calm, practiced, like this was just another report they'd file away and forget. At what point did you realize the trip wasn't normal? I didn't know how to answer that. Because the truth is, it was never normal. From the moment our tires left the highway and the signal bars on our phones vanished one by one, it felt like we had crossed into a place we weren't meant to find. This was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway. 2 nights. 1 cabin. No work, no stress, no city noise. Just trees, quiet air, and the kind of silence people pay money to experience. That's what we told ourselves. That's what the listing promised. That's what convinced us to keep driving, even when the road narrowed, even when the forest closed in so tightly that sunlight barely touched the asphalt. The last text I sent before losing service was a joke. If we die out here, tell my mom I loved her. I still don't know why I typed that. I wasn't scared yet. I didn't feel threatened. But something in me already understood that this place had teeth. By the time we arrived, the sky had begun to darken in that unnatural way it does before a storm that never quite comes. The cabin stood alone in a clearing, older than the photos suggested, its windows black and reflective, like it was watching us arrive. No other cars. No lights. No sound except the engine ticking as it cooled. I remember thinking how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet. Empty quiet. We should have left then. Instead, we unloaded the car. I didn't notice the smell at first. Not until I stepped closer to the door. It wasn't rot, not exactly. More like damp wood and something metallic underneath it, faint but wrong. The kind of smell you only realize you've been breathing once it's already in your lungs. The key was taped under a loose plank, just like the owner said it would be. That should have made me feel relieved. Instead, it made my stomach drop. Like someone expected us. Like this had all been planned. When I turned the key, the lock clicked too easily. Inside, the air was colder than it should have been. No heat running. No open windows. Yet my breath fogged in front of my face for just a second before disappearing. The place was furnished but not lived in. Chairs pushed too neatly under the table. Blankets folded with sharp edges. On the wall near the kitchen hung a framed photo turned face down. I don't know why that bothered me so much, but it did. Someone laughed behind me. One of us trying to break the tension. That laugh echoed longer than it should have. And that's when I noticed something else. There were muddy footprints on the floor. Not ours. They led from the back hallway straight to the bedroom door. I remember standing there, heart pounding, telling myself there was a rational explanation. Maybe the owner. Maybe cleaners. Maybe animals. But none of those thoughts explained why the prints stopped abruptly in the middle of the room. Or why they were barefoot. Or why the door at the end of the hall was slowly, quietly closing on its own. That was the moment I understood something terrible. This trip hadn't just gone wrong. It had already started long before we arrived. And whatever was waiting for us in that cabin had been waiting a long time. Before any of that happened, before the police reports, the sleepless nights, the questions I still can't answer, I was just a normal guy trying to escape a long, exhausting week. My name doesn't matter much, but for context, I was 28 at the time, working a standard office job in the city. The kind where days blur together under fluorescent lights, emails never stop, and weekends feel shorter every year. That Friday had been especially rough. Deadlines missed, a supervisor in a bad mood, and the constant noise of traffic outside my apartment window. By the time I shut down my computer, all I wanted was silence. That's why the weekend getaway sounded perfect. A friend of mine, someone I trusted completely, had found a small cabin rental deep in the forest. Nothing fancy, just a place to reset. No neighbors, no alarms, no schedules. We planned it as a short break, arriving Friday evening and leaving Sunday morning. 2 nights away from screens and stress. Felt harmless. Healthy even. We left the city just after sunset around 6:30. The sky was still soft with color. That calm blue and orange mix that makes everything feel slower. The car was packed with snacks, drinks, and a small speaker playing low music. We joked about how disconnected we were going to be, how nice it would feel to disappear for a couple of days. Someone even said, worst case, we get bored and come back early. We laughed. At the time, it felt impossible that anything bad could happen. The drive itself was peaceful. Highway lights gave way to open roads, and open roads eventually became winding paths surrounded by trees. The farther we went, the quieter everything felt. The music dropped to background noise. Conversation slowed. Not because of fear, just comfort. That kind of calm where no one feels the need to fill the silence. I remember checking the time on the dashboard. Just past 7. Still early. Plenty of night left to settle in. Cook something simple, maybe sit outside and enjoy the stars. I imagined crisp air, a warm drink in my hands, laughter echoing between the trees. In my head, the weekend was already working. When we finally turned onto the dirt road leading to the cabin, I felt a strange sense of relief. Like we had arrived somewhere safe, somewhere removed from everything that could hurt us. The forest didn't feel threatening then. It felt protective. Tall trees forming walls blocking out the rest of the world. The headlights swept across trunks and leaves, revealing nothing but nature and emptiness. The cabin appeared exactly as advertised. Small, wooden, nestled in a clearing, a soft outline against the darkening sky. It looked quiet, peaceful, untouched. No signs of movement, no lights in the distance. Just us and the place we'd chosen. We parked, stepped out of the car, and stretched our legs. The air smelled clean. Pine and damp earth. The kind of smell you don't get in the city. I remember smiling without realizing it. Feeling lighter. Safer. At that moment, standing there with the forest surrounding us and the stress of the week finally fading, nothing felt wrong. Nothing felt dangerous. It was just another weekend. Just another trip. And we had no idea how badly that sense of safety was about to be taken from us. The first hour passed exactly how we expected it to. We unpacked the car, brought our bags inside, and lit a few lamps around the cabin. The light was warm and low, bouncing softly off the wooden walls. It felt cozy, almost too perfect. Outside, the forest settled into night, the sky fading to black behind the trees. Crickets chirped. Somewhere far off, an owl called once, then went silent again. At first, the sounds were comforting. Proof that we weren't alone out there. Proof that this place was alive. We cooked a simple dinner and ate at the small table near the window. Conversation stayed light. Work complaints, jokes, plans for the next day. Every now and then, one of us would glance outside, more out of curiosity than concern. The darkness pressed right up against the glass, thick and unreadable, but it didn't bother me. Forests always look darker than they are. After we finished eating, we stepped outside to breathe in the night air. That's when I noticed how quiet it suddenly felt. The crickets had stopped. Not faded. Not slowly quieted down. They were just gone. The owl didn't call again. No wind in the leaves. It was like someone had pressed mute on the forest. I stood there listening, waiting for the sounds to come back. They didn't. Probably nothing, someone said behind me, brushing it off. And I nodded because that made sense. Nature does that sometimes. Animals move on. Sounds change. There was no reason to read into it. Still, I felt it then, a small, uncomfortable awareness. Like when you walk into a room and forget why, but know something's off. We went back inside. As the night went on, little things began to stand out. Not enough to scare us. Just enough to distract us. The cabin creaked more than expected, even when no one was moving. Floorboards popped in places we hadn't walked. At one point I thought I heard footsteps outside, slow, deliberate. But when I checked the window, there was nothing there. Just trees and darkness. I told myself it was animals. Deer. Raccoons. Branches snapping under weight. That explanation worked. For a while. Later, while washing dishes, I noticed the reflection in the window above the sink. The glass showed the inside of the cabin clearly, but behind it the forest looked wrong. Too still. Too close. The trees felt nearer than they should have been, like they'd leaned in while we weren't looking. I stared a little longer than necessary before turning away. Around 10, one of us mentioned feeling cold. Not the normal nighttime chill, but a deep creeping cold that didn't match the temperature. We checked the thermostat. It was fine. Still, someone pulled on a jacket. Then another. I laughed it off, but my shoulders stayed tense. That was when the feeling started, the unmistakable sense of being watched. Not watched like someone was staring directly at me. Watched like something was aware of us. Like the forest knew exactly where we were inside that cabin. I kept catching myself listening instead of talking, my eyes drifting toward the windows, the door, the dark corners of the room. Every time I told myself to relax, another small thing happened. A soft knock sound, too light to be the door, too solid to be a branch. A shadow that shifted just beyond the window, gone when I focused on it. A faint smell, metallic, almost mixed with the pine. No single moment screamed danger. But all together they formed something else. Unease. The kind that sits low in your chest and refuses to leave. The kind that doesn't come with a reason, only a warning. By the time we decided to head to bed, the cabin no longer felt like a shelter. Felt like a place we were borrowing. And something outside was waiting for us to give it back. I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not my own. For a few seconds I stayed perfectly still, my eyes open in the darkness, listening. The cabin was pitch black except for a faint line of moonlight slipping through the curtains. The breathing was slow. Heavy. Too close. It wasn't coming from anyone else in the room. It was coming from the hallway. My heart began to pound so hard I was sure it could be heard. I held my breath, straining to listen. The sound stopped. Then the floorboard creaked. Not the random pop of settling wood. This was deliberate. A single step. Then another. Each one slow, controlled, like whoever or whatever was out there didn't need to rush. I sat up, my mouth dry, my entire body screaming at me to stay quiet. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. No answer. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and turned the screen on. The glow lit the room just enough to see the doorway. Empty. But the air felt wrong. Thick. Heavy. Like the cabin itself was pressing down on us. That's when the smell hit me again. Stronger this time. Metallic. Rotting. Like wet iron and something old that shouldn't be disturbed. I slid out of bed and moved toward the door. Every step feeling louder than it should have. The hallway beyond was dark, but I could see the outline of the front door at the far end. And standing in front of it, something was blocking the light. A shape. Too tall. Too thin. It didn't move at first. Just stood there, perfectly still, as if it knew I was watching. My phone trembled in my hand as I raised it higher. The light from the screen brushed against the shape, and that's when it turned its head. The face wasn't right. Its features were wrong, stretched and shallow, like they'd been copied from a human memory instead of a real person. The eyes reflected the light back at me, dull and empty, set too far apart. Its mouth opened slightly, revealing teeth that looked uneven, broken, like they'd never been meant to fit together. I stumbled backward, crashing into the wall. That's when it moved. Fast. The air shifted violently, like pressure dropping all at once. The temperature plummeted. I felt it in my bones. The thing stepped forward, its movements jerky and unnatural, like it didn't fully understand how legs were supposed to work. Someone screamed behind me. "Run!" That single word snapped me out of it. We bolted. The cabin exploded into chaos. Feet pounding, furniture scraping, doors slamming open and shut. The thing let out a sound that wasn't a scream but wasn't silence either. It was a low, vibrating noise that rattled the walls and made my ears ring. I looked back just once. It was closer. Too close. We slammed ourselves into the nearest room and locked the door, shoving a dresser in front of it. The handle rattled immediately, violently twisting back and forth. Wood groaned. Something slammed into the door from the other side, hard enough to shake the walls. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an animal. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't our imagination. Whatever was in that cabin knew we were there. It had waited, watched, and now it wasn't pretending anymore. My phone buzzed in my hand. No signal. The lights flickered once, twice, and went out completely. In the darkness, with that thing trying to break through the door, I realized the truth far too late. This weekend getaway wasn't an accident. And the forest hadn't gone quiet because it was empty. It had gone quiet because something had come home. The door buckled inward with a deafening crack. Wood splintered. The dresser slid an inch across the floor. "Out the window!" someone yelled. Adrenaline took over before fear could paralyze us. I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and hurled it at the glass. It shattered outward, cold night air rushing in like a scream. The sound felt too loud, like a signal. The door exploded inward. The thing forced itself through the gap, limbs bending at impossible angles, its head scraping the top of the doorway as if it didn't quite fit in our world. That low, vibrating sound poured out of it, rattling my teeth. We didn't wait. One by one, we scrambled through the window, cutting our hands on broken glass, dropping hard into the dirt outside. My ankles screamed as I landed wrong, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The forest swallowed us instantly, branches clawing at our faces, roots trying to trip us. Behind us, the cabin lights flickered back on, then went out. I heard it hit the ground. Not running, charging. Heavy, uneven footsteps tearing through leaves and brush. Too fast. Way too fast. Don't stop, someone screamed ahead of me. My lungs burned. My vision tunneled. I could hear my heartbeat louder than anything else, until it was drowned out by that sound again. Closer now, almost right behind me. I felt a rush of air pass my shoulder as something swiped at me, missing by inches. I stumbled and fell. Hands grabbed my jacket and yanked me back up just as something slammed into the tree where my head had been a second earlier. Bark exploded. The trunk shook violently. We veered off the trail, crashing downhill, sliding through mud and rocks. I tasted blood in my mouth. Somewhere to my left, someone cried out in pain but kept moving. The forest didn't feel like a place anymore. Felt like a trap. Branches snapped ahead of us. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. For a terrifying moment, I thought there were more than one of it, figures shifting between trees, but I didn't dare look long enough to be sure. We reached the creek. Water surged loud and fast, moonlight flashing across its surface. No bridge. No easy way across. The thing was almost on us now. I could hear its breathing again, wet and labored like it was excited. We jumped. The water was ice cold, stealing the breath from my lungs. The current nearly took me under, slamming me into rocks, but I clawed my way forward, dragging myself to the opposite bank. Hands reached out, pulling me up. One of us slipped. They screamed as something grabbed their leg from the shadows of the water. The scream cut off suddenly, too suddenly, and whatever had them was dragged backward into the darkness. No one went back. We ran again. Lights appeared through the trees, faint, distant, unreal. A road. Salvation. The thing roared behind us, a sound of pure rage now, crashing through the forest without care, snapping branches like toothpicks. I burst out of the tree line and onto the asphalt, collapsing hard. A car screeched to a stop just feet away, its headlights blinding. Someone yelled. Doors flew open. The thing stopped at the edge of the trees. I saw it clearly then. It didn't cross the road. It stood just beyond the light, watching. Its head tilted slowly, almost curiously, as if memorizing us. Then it stepped back, melting into the forest like it had never been there at all. The car doors slammed shut. The engine roared. As we sped away, none of us spoke. Because deep down we all knew something terrifying. We hadn't escaped because we were faster. We'd escaped because it let us go. The police didn't believe us. Not really. They listened, nodded, wrote things down, but their eyes said it all. Shock. Confusion. Doubt. By the time the sun came up, we were sitting under fluorescent lights at a small rural station, wrapped in borrowed blankets, shaking more from exhaustion than cold. They went back to the cabin with us later that morning. Nothing was wrong. The front door was intact. No splintered wood. No broken lock. The dresser was exactly where it had been earlier that night, pushed neatly against the wall like it had never moved. The shattered window was gone too, replaced clean, no glass in the dirt outside. No footprints. No blood. No sign of a struggle. Except one thing. The smell. That same metallic, rotting scent lingered faintly in the hallway. One officer wrinkled his nose and said it was probably old plumbing. Another joked about mold. They laughed it off. We didn't. When they searched the creek, they found nothing. No torn clothing. No drag marks. No body. The friend who had slipped into the water was officially listed as missing. Later, quietly, they changed it to presumed drowned. But the current wasn't strong enough for that. We all knew it. They asked us again and again to describe what we saw. Every time we tried, the details slipped away. Like trying to remember a face from a dream. The height changed. The shape blurred. The sound was impossible to put into words. It was like the thing didn't want to be remembered clearly. After a few hours, they let us go. No charges. No warnings. Just advice to get some rest and maybe talk to someone. We never went back to that forest. Life moved on the way it always does, slowly at first, then all at once. Jobs, bills, normal conversations. On the surface, everything returned to normal. But something had shifted inside us. I stopped sleeping through the night. Loud breathing in a quiet room made my chest tighten. Forests, once peaceful, felt hostile now, like places that tolerated humans instead of welcoming them. Weeks later, I received a call from one of the officers. They'd found something near the creek. Not remains. Not evidence. Just a phone. Waterlogged. Crack screen. But when they powered it on, it still worked. It was my missing friend's phone. The last video on it was timestamped at 2:17 a.m., the exact moment we were running through the woods. The officer asked if I wanted to see it. I said yes. The video was only 8 seconds long. It showed the creek at night, the camera shaking violently. My friend was breathing hard, whispering my name. Then the camera tilted upward, and the sound changed. That low, vibrating noise flooded the speakers, louder than before. Something stepped into frame. The video cut to black. That was it. The officer said there was nothing visible enough to identify. Poor lighting. Motion blur. He suggested deleting it. I told him to keep it. That night, alone in my apartment, my phone buzzed. A notification. No sender. No number. Just a single image. It was taken from outside my bedroom window. The angle was wrong, too high. Too close. And in the reflection of the glass behind my own terrified face, I could see a shape standing in the darkness of the room. Watching. Waiting. And that's when I finally understood something that still keeps me awake at night. That thing didn't follow us home by accident. It followed us because the weekend was over. And it was time for the next day.